What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for being here for part two of Decoding Wendi Adelson. The first part got some of the best feedback I've ever done of a video. So thank you all so much for the comments, for following Jack on his channel and his podcast, all his links. Really appreciate it. It was, and just me watching it real time, I was like blown away by the information that Jack was giving us. And now I've added Julia Cowley. I mean, this is going to be, I think, really good, guys. So buckle up. And if you don't know Julia Cowley, she is a retired FBI agent and profiler. She spent 22 years in the FBI investigating violent crime, including serial killings and sex offenses, white collar crime, public corruption, and civil rights. She was also a member of the FBI's evidence response team. Prior to joining the FBI, Julia was a special agent forensic scientist with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. She has a bachelor's degree in chemistry and a master's degree in forensic science, and she is the host of the Consult podcast. It's in the description. Please check it out. I'm telling you, it is really freaking good. I've started listening to podcasts to catch up on cases I didn't used to, but now I do, and I can tell when there's good ones and bad ones. And it's a phenomenal podcast. So please check it out. And Jack is from Never a Truer Word. He runs the channel where he looks at statements from people in the news and analyzes their word choices to uncover deception and reveal the truth. Away from the channel, Jack has worked with law enforcement, private investigators, journalists, cold case teams, and corporate HR departments to give them insight into the words used by persons of interest. Find him at neveratruerword.com. Please subscribe to his YouTube channel. All the things also in the description of the channel of this live. Also in there is the link to the first episode we did. If you missed it, check it out. So without further ado, let me bring on Julia and Jack. How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for being here. And Julia, I wanted to start with you. If first you could describe your podcast to the people, tell them what you do. And then if you could just talk about how important police interviews are for when you were investigating cases.
Sure. So my podcast called The Consult, Real FBI Profilers. And I do the show with three of my former colleagues who are also retired FBI profilers, Angela Surser, Susan Kostler-Drew, and Bob Drew. And we all work together in the unit, behavioral analysis unit, when we were in the FBI. And we look at both solved and unsolved cases from a behavioral perspective. It's a completely different perspective than typical true crime podcasts. And in terms of interviews, one of the things, and this show is going to be really good, and it's going to be very similar to what we do in the BAU. You have an expert in statement analysis alongside an expert in behavioral analysis, and you're looking at these interviews. And from my perspective, I know Jack is really concentrating on the different word choices used. Of course, I look at that as well, but also looking at discrepancies, looking at common themes that they might bring up. And one of the things that I'm really looking for is something that might be an area of investigative focus that the individual is subconsciously brought up, or areas where that they think are important to them, and what can we learn about their personality traits and characteristics? What is important? What do they value? And some of that can come through during the interview. And I think that comes through a lot in Wendi Adelson's interview of who she is as a person and what she values.
Oh man, I'm so excited to get you guys' analysis here. And I think, and I said this to them before, but I think what's great about both you guys is this was new to you. I mean, you might have had a little background, but you've never seen her interview before. So like you're both coming in with a fresh perspective. Some people like myself may be a little biased, but you guys are coming in with the fresh perspective. So very excited to get that. Jack, if you could kind of give us the highlights, because I know there were some holy cow moments that I had that when you said them, I was like, wow, that's so true. Hit us with like the highlights from our first episode for the folks who didn't see it.
Yeah, so we ran through her first pass through the timeline with the police detective, really. So that was like about half an hour's worth of her talking. She told the story of her day so far up until she ended up in the police station, and I thought she was selling the story. She was building an alibi. She was saying, "Here's what's happened, and here's why it happened, and here's the proof that it happened," which is really strange. When she didn't pull the trigger, she still felt like she had to have this alibi built. She spoke about going down Trescott, which is where the murder happened, and the way she told that story and the very four different reasons or four different descriptions of what she saw that day made me think, well, she tried to say she was going down there out of habit. I believe she was there. I don't believe it was out of habit. She has this habit of blurting out, "Oh my God," and then saying something that hasn't been asked for, but is usually quite relevant. Now, I don't know whether that is just her brain dumping because she's in a police interview, her ex-husband's been shot and she's very tense, or whether that is because she's actually being manipulative and wants to lead the detective to certain things. Twice, which I thought was really interesting, when the detective got closer to getting her phone from her to download the data from her phone of who she'd spoken to that morning, she took the conversation elsewhere. She diverted away from that. And I think some of the things we'll look at in this part, we'll see why that was. And also when she talks about the murder, the only thing that comes into her head around the murder, the reason for it is closeness to her and closeness to Dan. And she mentions he wasn't loved. And she mentions people were angry with him. And also unprompted, she brought up the argument that her and Dan had about the schooling of their children, which was no need for her to mention that at all. It came up out of nowhere when she was talking about it. By the other thing, the TV repair she had going on that morning, there is something really, really odd about that TV repair. It's way higher in her priority list than it should be on the day her ex-husband was shot.
And first of all, I want to say the "oh my God" thing hit me big time, and that's one of the comments in the chat. And I see in the comments that a lot of people that she sets herself up, just "oh my God," then something comes out, And also you described how like she had three different audiences and she played three different characters, which I thought was really an astute observation. And I'm wondering, Julia, because you watched like the first part that we went over, was there anything that stood out to you behaviorally or just any observations you had before we start this second part?
Sure. I agree with Jack's analysis. In terms of the TV set, I think anytime, and I know Jack pointed this out, anytime someone is offering these unnecessary details, that's an area of focus. Doesn't mean they're lying. Doesn't mean it just tells you, okay, this is important to them. Why are they adding this in? What is going on? And that's just an area that you go back and you ask about, you inquire about, you want to find out why that's important. So the fact that Jack keyed in on that, I wholeheartedly agree. The only other thing I want to bring up about it is that I know Jack had brought up when she said she didn't have time to take a shower. And I agree with Jack's assessment that she's trying to say, oh, I was so busy, I didn't even have time to take a shower, so I certainly couldn't have committed a murder. So she's really trying to show how busy she was. But another thing I think about that is that she has a habit of doing this throughout the interview, is really focusing on how she doesn't look good. And so I think that's just see, I didn't even have time to take a shower. Look how bad I am. I'm in crisis. And she continues to point that out through the interview. If you're truly in crisis, I don't think you need to continue to point that out to people. So the thing I'm getting is that she's just trying to show us, look how horrible this is. I didn't shower. Look what a mess I am. But what that also tells us is that looks are important to her. People's perception. She wants everyone to know I look better than this normally, but I'm in crisis. And she repeats that throughout. It's a theme. It's a theme.
Yeah, she even says when they're gonna check her hands for the gunpowder residue. She's like, "Oh, I'm embarrassed to say I didn't even wash my hands." And she, Jack she talks to the advocate, and she's like, "Oh, that's a nice like." There's a lot of stuff there. One thing I want to ask you, Julia, and maybe this means nothing, but something I noticed, and you guys haven't watched the testimony, but she does this in the interview and in the testimony. And I might mean nothing, but she does these hand gestures, Julia. I don't know if you noticed during, like, when she starts like explaining. Did you notice that at all? Could that possibly mean something, or is that just like?
I think she's expressive with her hands. So potentially, if she stops using her hands when she's trying to explain something, then you want to look at, okay, what's the difference? When is she using her hands? I'm cautious about body language, but I do think, I mean, I talk with my hands. I'm doing it right now. It's like my way to express. And it's like, are you listening to me? But I think it's when you notice the change of when she's using her hands or not using her hands. Is there something that has changed in the interview? Is that a different topic? Is it a problem for her? Is she more comfortable? I think that's probably better suited for a body language expert, but it's certainly something that I would pay attention to and just say, okay, is there some kind of difference in the questioning here? And she's no longer as expressive, or she becomes more expressive. What is it?
All right, very interesting. All right, folks. So now Jack sent me some queued up spots we're going to go to in the interview. Again, please check out the Consult Pod. Give it 5 stars. Don't be lazy. Also, check out Jack's, all his links, YouTube, Twitter, both of them. All their links are in there. Please, and the mods are sharing them. Please check them out. So I'm going to go right now. We're going to share the screen. Here we go. The first timestamp. Here we go, everybody. Let's check it out. And then Jack and Julia are going to stop me, and we'll go through it.
It's fine. I want to figure out who this is because I'm honestly worried.
Well, let me ask you, if you found out that this was someone that you personally know, would that change your mind about what should happen to that person?
About what should happen to that person?
For prosecution purposes.
No.
Is there any way that you would think
somebody tried to kill my ex-husband, they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Regardless of who it is?
I mean, it would be different if I thought it were my brother, but I don't think it was my family. Okay. Anyone outside my immediate family, that's a tough one. Okay. But I don't think my immediate family did this. So okay. If it's anybody else, yeah.
Okay. Would you think that this guy Charlie would even be capable of doing something like this?
No.
It's just talk.
He's the Joker.
Okay. All right. Okay. Based on
the first of all, what an answer there. And by the way, this, you guys, if you haven't seen the trials, it comes up in the trial and she lies about it. She says, no, I didn't say that. Like, I wouldn't want to prosecute my family. What do you mean? Someone got murdered, and if it was your family, like, no, they should get off. Sorry, Jack, go ahead.
No, that's all right. I think Julia probably knows better than I, but this is a great question to ask someone. What do you think what penalty should the guilty person suffer? Because a truly innocent person will just say whatever the actual penalty is for the crime, that's what the person should suffer. A guilty person is going to go, well, wait a minute, this applies to me, so I'm going to be very circumspect about what I say, which Wendi is. The first thing that happens is when she's asked the question, what do you think should happen to that person? She repeats the question back, which buys herself thinking time, because her brain is going, I don't have the words to answer this question properly. I haven't thought this one through. I don't have a prepared answer. I don't have anything yet to send to my mouth that's going to make sense. So I'm going to buy myself some thinking time by repeating the question back about what should happen to that person, she says. The detective says for prosecution purposes. And she says, no, if somebody's trying to kill my ex-husband, they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, which is not the same thing as the murderer should be jailed for life or should face the chair or anything like that. She talks about the legal process. So a bit of distance there from what's happening. And then she just offers up her family. He says, regardless of who it is. And she's like, well, if it was my brother, well, why is that the first name that comes into your head when, you're asked regardless of who it is? And then she says, but I don't think it's my family. So she doesn't say, well, if it was my brother, but I don't think it was him. She says, but my brother, I don't think it was my family. So almost as if she's actually building a conspiracy right there in front of her eyes with her answer to that question. Then she says, but I don't think my immediate family did this. So if it's anybody else, yeah. So this question has really rattled her because her answer, she delays giving an answer. And then the answer that she gives is not one that's dead reassuring. Someone has just murdered your ex-husband, lock him up for life.
What do you think?
It's leakage. It's leakage. And she does it several times through her interview. She's leaking out information. I think, as Jack has pointed out, it's hard to lie. It's cognitively more difficult to lie, I should say, for people. And a lot of times their true feelings and emotions will come out when they're not expecting a question. That is a very standard type of law enforcement question. What do you think should happen? In my training, we were always told, be cautious of somebody that says, well, it depends if what should happen to them. I mean, if they have remorse, maybe they should just get life in prison. Or if they soften it, you have to wonder, are they involved? Do they know who's involved? And she doesn't even do that. She just says, well, if it's my brother, I don't think he should walk scot-free. No, she doesn't say that, but it is so interesting that she automatically brings up her brother. It's not the only time she does that in the interview. To me, I can't imagine. Most of us have a family member who's been killed, and you automatically are thinking, like, I don't think it's my brother.
Right.
I mean, most of us would be like, no.
There's no way.
It wouldn't even come into our heads.
Right.
So
the other thing is that at the end he says, is it just talk? Right. And she does not say, yes, it's just talk. He's got a big mouth, but he wouldn't do something like this. She doesn't deny it. She goes, he's a joker. That's not the same thing as saying, yeah, he's got a big mouth, but he wouldn't do it, or he's, would not hurt anyone in the world, let alone Dan or my ex-husband. He just goes, he's a joker, which is not denying the statement that's put to him about Charlie.
Interesting. All right, so let's go now. By the way, folks, I don't know if you saw Jack's post on Instagram. He ran out of printer ink after all the things, all the things that he went over. He ran out of printer ink. So should I go to 226 now, or keep?
Yeah,
going?
Okay. I would go for 226 now. Yeah.
Okay. Oh boy, here comes Jane. For folks who don't know, this is her friend who's a teacher at the college, who's also alleges to be a friend of Jeff Lacoste. But boy. Well, we'll see. Here we go.
You know how he is?
He's not good, Jane.
Really?
I was driving up the street and I saw the tape and I just thought, oh, maybe there's an electrical outage or something. I saw the street blocked.
So
I was driving into town. I was running errands. I was meeting some friends for lunch, and I drove up Trescott because it's the shortcut. And so I drive up Trescott and I see the tape and I was like, I guess there was an electrical outage, because sometimes we'd have trees that would fall or whatever. And so I turned around and didn't think anything of it. I was at lunch with two friends and the officer shows up.
Yeah.
And I've been here.
This is the exact same thing for me, where she just goes through storytelling mode. Why, when you're telling your friend that you're driving down Trescott, would you tell her why you were there? It's a shortcut. This is an automatic loop that she's got going through her mind. That is, I don't know why she was in Trescott, right? It was not by chance, and it was not a shortcut. So even when she's telling her friend she was in Trescott, she's got to go, because it's a shortcut. She didn't even tell her friend where she was going. The friend must be going, shortcut from where to where? You haven't told me any of this. You've just told me you were on a shortcut. So once again, and she's remarkably consistent with the things I'm suspicious of, or the things I have questions of. She's very consistent in talking about them the same way. I did this, and then having to explain why she did it. So it was not a chance that she was just driving down Trescott because it's a shortcut.
What do you think, Julia? Did you notice anything?
I agree. Her priority is to tell a story. That's exactly what she's done it from the very beginning of the interview, to get out this story, this version of events. And I agree, it's an area to focus on. And I don't believe that she's being genuine in her reasoning for going down that road.
All right, let's go to 234. Okay.
Me neither.
What I thought of.
I just keep picturing the kids.
Right. No. So there's no point in doing that. Don't do that. So
When Lynn gets here, I'm gonna just ask her to take the kids to her house. Would that be
Instead of my
unreasonable?
house?
I think
Wouldn't that
that's
be
much
more
better.
reasonable?
Is that better? She has a TV. They can
Yeah,
watch TV.
yeah,
I know, but
Yes.
they've been there before.
A
Yeah.
bunch.
Yeah,
they're
take them
very
there.
comfortable there.
Do they
Take them
have
there.
children of their own?
They've got 4 kids. They're grown, but
take
Okay.
them there. Take them
okay,
there.
yeah.
Because
All right, I'm gonna go make sure that I don't miss her.
Okay.
thank you.
Lynn Grossman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
This is Sarah, by the way.
Hi, Sarah. Are you a victim advocate?
I am.
I said you used to be a victim advocate. Was I
That's
right?
not true. Yeah, I've done lots of stuff like that.
I
but-
recognize your name, and then she explained.
What's
it
your
was
last
like,
name?
Latour. I've only been here about 2.5 years.
I am losing my shit.
Well, that would be appropriate. I think you should do that. I think if you don't do that, that's
Jane,
not right.
who would have done this?
I have just
And
one
are they
idea.
going to come after my kids? Or me? Who's next?
Is Jeff this much of a lunatic?
Once again, we've just got her bringing in the closeness of herself to the murder, that the person could be coming after her or after her kids, even asking her friend who could have done this. So we still have that circle of closeness in Wendy's mind. The murder is so close to her that it doesn't enter into her head that, this could be someone so far removed with a grudge against Dan she didn't know about. No, she's convinced that this is about her and her life, or close to her and her life as well.
Julia, did you notice? And one thing I noticed, I want either one of you know, when Jane comes in, they just start like laughing it up half the time. It makes me so angry. Like I don't know if that means anything. It might mean nothing on it. But anyway, go ahead, Julia. What are you? Or Jack, you can go first.
Go ahead, Jack.
I was only going to say, Julia, because you know more about these things than me, it appears to me there that Wendi is at the center of that interaction. I know she's sitting in the center of the screen, but she's kind of going, here's this person, here's that person. I said you were this. I don't know if you were this. And she is the social center of that world.
Right. I was going to point out, too, that throughout the interview, she keeps telling us what a mess she is, but she's anything but a mess. She is so astute. She's noticing things. She's remembering her manners. She's introducing. I mean, that's shocking. Oh, this is Sarah. She is not as distraught as she appears. She's holding it together very well. At one point, the other detective comes in. She's like, I don't know who that is. So she is registering who people are. Oftentimes when you're in shock, as she claims she is, which I don't believe she is, I don't see any signs of it. People are just swirling about you. There's lots of people coming in. I need this. I need you. And you're just kind of confused. And none of that is going on, but yet she feels the need to keep telling us this. She is so put together, despite the crying, despite the sniffling. She is taking notes. She is remembering things. She even, at one point, I think with Detective Isom, he relays the phone call that she had received from her realtor. He says something slightly wrong, and she's like, oh, no, she didn't say that. She accurately remembers that call, and even when in a situation you might be stressed and not able to remember. So the fact that she turns and introduces Sarah is just it's surprising. It's surprising, especially when she's told us how out of it, how in crisis she is. You see it throughout.
So does that kind of lead you to believe that like she knew this was coming? She planned this. Like, is that as you're analyzing, is that your thought, or is it something else?
I think what it tells me, and I don't want to overstate what I am thinking. There are other things that make me think she likely had prior knowledge. But what it tells me is that in a stressful situation, she's holding it together. But she's trying to make us think she's not. I don't look good. Look at what a mess I am because I'm in crisis. But you see all these little details that she's picking up on. She's catching things. How'd they get in my car? She's seeing every detail. This is not somebody who's just completely out of it, who can't parent. The other thing, well, I don't want to We can keep going, but there
Okay.
was something else. I can't remember what. I don't have a timestamp for it, but at some point I want to bring it up because I thought it was kind of a shocking thing that she said.
Just at the end as well, no, we're not really looking too deeply at Jane, but Jane says, is Jeff this much of a lunatic? And we've come to find out that Jane put Wendi and Jeff together, but thinks the guy's a lunatic. So she's obviously quite happy to let her friends run off with people she considers lunatics.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but it becomes clear that whoever was setting this up was clearly trying to set up Jeff to be the patsy. He's the rental car that the hitman rent is the exact same color and type, almost the exact same color and type. He is leaving. He would have been leaving, but he changed his trip plans. But he would have been leaving at the exact same time that the hitman would have been leaving. Also, there's 2 times. Because the hitman went down twice. They went two different times. This was the second time. The first time they left, and guess what? Jeff was planning to be leaving both those times. So just a little background for you guys who may not know that.
Which in episode 1, Wendi was asked about Charlie. What kind of car does Charlie have? And she says he's got 5 cars. I don't know what he was driving at the time.
Yes.
And so that. Well, which cars were being driven at the time was certainly in her head. It's not proof of anything, but it's just very interesting that hangs together like that.
Very interesting. All right, so let's go back to the next timestamp, which is... Oh, should I keep going here, Jack?
No, I think the next one's, if you're going to the 4-hour-6 one.
Oh, there's 357 first.
Oh, 357 first, right.
Yeah,
okay, go for that.
All right.
Someone, but sometimes time isn't necessarily always on our side.
Because they want someone.
Well, they need to tell someone because eventually he's gonna need someone to make those decisions and stuff.
Okay. It looks bizarre to get these messages of about book club and
How life kind of sometimes just keeps moving.
recommending students for jobs and. Sort of waiting. Oh my god. I can't help but feeling like this is all my fault.
Why do you feel that way?
Why would somebody do this, right? If I had been still married to him, then there wouldn't be anyone that was angry. Right? There wouldn't be any kind of disgruntled, wouldn't be Amy's husband. This can't be a random act of violence. This has to be on purpose. Someone did this for a reason.
Okay. I'll pause it there. Before you do your analysis, again, guys, please check out the console pod. Check out Never a True Word. Check out all the links. They're all in the description if you're on the replay crew. Please check them out. Give the pod 5 stars. Do all the things. Go ahead, Jack.
This is just the same thing that we've seen time and time again, that she is talking about the murder being very close to her. In fact, she's actually saying, now, Julia, I don't know whether this is leakage or whether this is just trying to throw someone under a bus. This would not have happened if I'd still been married to him, i.e. the reason for him being dead is we're divorced. Now, she does try and say that's because then he wouldn't have met Amy and Amy's husband wouldn't have come down and randomly been really mad and killed Dan. But once more, she's the center of the whole thing, the whole reason why it happened. And I'd be really interested in Julia's take on this, actually, because I can't decide whether she is leaking, which I see all the time when I do statement analysis of little bits coming out here and there that lead you to the truth, or whether, because you're saying, actually, and I agree with you, that she is very well composed as she talks, is she actually throwing out these little breadcrumbs for someone to go and follow, knowing full well that she's actually got an alibi for the morning and, nothing can happen to her?
I'm struggling as well, trying to determine if she is so manipulative that she's trying to appear so helpful. This has to be related to me because this is our risk level, that she is that astute, that she's throwing out plausible reasons so it looks like she is helping, or if it's leakage, if that makes sense. She's very smart. She it's just hard. It's hard to say. It's hard to say if it's done purposeful. She's certainly trying to lead them to someone else that's close to her, but not her brother.
Yeah. Also noticeable that there wasn't "oh my god" before that. I can't help thinking there was an "oh my god" and then a long pause. And after her "oh my gods," something always comes out that's potentially planned.
What's interesting to me is, because I've watched this way too many times, is I think she's trying to like leave breadcrumbs. I think she's trying to, but she doesn't leave the breadcrumb of Jeff Lacasse, her ex that she broke up with, that she's trying to make that had to be brought out by Jane. She doesn't really introduce that, which I find interesting. She does try to put it on the Dan's girlfriend and Dan's girlfriend's ex-husband, but it's not her that like, and like, I'm almost at the thought that she's so diabolical because she had met with Jane like earlier in the week, and she like told her that like they were having issues, and she said stop. So like I'm meant to believe that she's so diabolical that she like planted that seed, hoping she would be in the interview and that she would be the person, so it wasn't her to do it. But I'm not the expert like you guys.
I mean, that's a good observation, Jay, that this isn't really related to me. This is more about Dan's choices, not my choices. So it's sort of pushing it off on him, but yet still, poor me. I feel like ultimately it's my fault because of the divorce. So feel sorry for me, but it just comes back to her need to blame Dan. She does it throughout the interview. So I think your observation is very well taken. Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Good job.
Thanks. That means a lot. But it's probably because I've watched this like too many times, and I've frankly lost my mind.
Jay, that's what we do. That's what we do. We watch these things. It depends on the case, but you could listening to a call or watching an interview or reading transcripts over and over again on cases if something doesn't make sense and trying to make sense of it. So the fact that you've done that, that's exactly what we would do in our work as well.
Very interesting. All right. So what's the next one? 406. All right.
Can I just give people something to watch before this next one? So the next one, Wendi is going to go over the timeline that again with the detective, and there's something that's called "and so" storytelling. So if I told you guys what I did this morning, I got up and I went for a run, then I watched the Formula One race, washed my car, and I did my laundry and went shopping. Okay, so that's me telling you what I did, right? It's just a list of events. If you said to me, "You look really tired. What did you do this morning?" Oh, well, the Formula One race was on at 8 o'clock this morning, and so I had to get up at 7 to go for a run. Got in and watched that, and I've been away all week, and so my laundry's been piling up and my car's filthy, and I'm using "and so" to explain what happened in the morning. It's a very different question. What did you do this morning? And you look tired. What have you been up to? So the "and so" is when someone is telling something that's happened, but they're explaining as well. And it can take the form of "and so this happened," or it can be "and I was very tired, and so I went to bed." So just watch out for how often she says "and so" in this next section, which says that she is not necessarily means that she's hiding something or lying, but she is not just saying what happened. She's explaining what happened as she uses this "and so" storytelling.
All right, let's check this out. And so, all right.
My kids are not going to see the news, so I'm not worried about that. I guess you're just telling the story.
No, I'm saying that's probably why these people are trying to get a hold of you now.
Yeah.
I need to go back. I need a timeline here. What time did you wake up this morning?
A little before 8. I know that because the repairman was supposed to be here between 8 and 12, and I didn't set an alarm. So I woke up like, oh God, I need to put some clothes on and get ready.
Okay, what at 8 o'clock?
Yeah. So you've got an "and so" there straight away. So, and I didn't set an alarm, so I woke up. So this is the start of the "and so" storytelling. Also, she's got a touch of the Amber Heards. She's asked what time she woke up, and she says a little before 8. I know that because Amber Heard, when she was giving testimony in that trial, would always tell us not just what happened, but she remembered it happening, or I know that happened because, and that is very different from just coming out and just talking about what you remember. You know, like you're going to tell a story, it's obvious you remember it, so why are you flagging up that you remember things? And this is why, you know, she's starting to explain why she knows something. She mentions that she put some clothes on. Now, my first thought there was, I wondered if she was trying to be a bit flirtatious with the detective, you know, so I was naked at some point. But then I thought some more about that. I was like, is she flirtatious anywhere else? And I wondered if it was in the part you mentioned earlier, Julia, where she said she didn't have a shower, you know, like, is she trying to say, you know, dirty, flirtatious, etc. And actually, I noticed, very similar to you, Julia, she mentions being dirty a lot. So she mentions that she didn't have a shower. When they come to take gunshot residue from her hand, she says, I'm afraid to say I haven't washed my hands. And a little bit later on, when she's ID'd for buying alcohol, she says, I'm as old as dirt. So she mentions dirt a lot through this. It's one of the recurring themes, which could be, I'm no psychologist, that could be actually feeling a bit grubby about everything that's happened, if you know what I mean. Or to your point, Julia, which I would bow to your much greater knowledge and experience than mine, could be this wanting to show how disheveled she is, how much this has hit her, what a hard day she has had.
I think that's interesting. I'd want to know, is she a neat freak as well? And that not having showered and feeling grubby and not put together is bothering her. So that keeps coming out as well.
I can give you go ahead, Jack.
I was just going to say, in the first part, she said she didn't have a shower, but she did do the laundry. She was so pressed for time. It was do the laundry or have a shower, and she did the laundry. Not she carried on and did her work or anything like that. So go on. Is she a neat freak?
Well, I could tell you this. She wore the exact same outfit in the first trial and second trial. And the thought was, I mean, this is a speculation, that like if someone Googled her, they wouldn't be able to tell if she was testifying, if like she was in two trials. That's like, because she just wore the same outfit and they're Googling, oh, it's just the same trial. Like so that's just one thing. Another thing is she very clearly has blue contacts that she even mentions in this police interview, that she talks to the liquor store guy. Oh, he mentions my blue eyes. Like she said that. So, and also, by the way, she has this lunch planned. Why is she not ready if she's supposed to be going to this lunch, which she then drives way out of the way? If you guys don't know this, there's the whole story about how she has to drive to the liquor store, and it's the shortcut. There is a liquor store which is right next to the place she was going for the lunch, and which is like 5 minutes away from her, and she decides to take this long roundabout just because. So just some things for you guys to know about her, maybe if you didn't have any background on that. I don't know if that means anything, but just interesting about old Wendi. So let's continue this here.
He called, or like my mom called. I could see what time the calls came in, but let's see, starting this morning. Yeah, my mom called at 8:09. And then the repair guy called at 8:08, and then my mom called at 8:09. I guess he called her to trying to sorry. So yeah, so then the repair guy called, and I don't remember exactly what time he got there, but like between 8 and 9, probably closer to 9.
Okay, what time did he leave?
Around 10. He could probably tell you, like he'll have a record of what time he called in to figure out whether to repair it or buy a new one.
Okay.
So he'll have a record of his calls too.
Cool.
Before 10 a.m.
So what I've noticed is this is a completely different timeline from the first one. And what's changed here is that she gave the first timeline, and I'll accept some discrepancies. Our recall is not entirely proper, but I noticed when she gave the first timeline, for example, she was asked, what time did the repair guy get there? And she said, he called at 8 and left about 10. Right, so she didn't actually answer the question and say in the first time what time the repair guy got there. And we know, and I said at the time, she's trying to make that as big a window as possible. She wants to give the impression the repair guy was there between 8 and 10, but she didn't actually say that. And now, because the police have taken her phone by now, downloaded all the calls, downloaded all the data, and she has the phone back, she's suddenly being a lot more precise about what happened that morning. And so this timeline is much more precise. It's got much more in it, which is why I think when he was talking to her about getting the phone from her, she wasn't resistant. She said, yes, you can have it. But then every time he said, I'm going to go and get the forms, she would throw in an, oh my God, or a, do I have to have my Miranda rights read now? So I think she realized that once they'd got the phone, then the first timeline she tried to establish was kind of out the window there. So lots of things change from all the way through this, from the first time she did it to the next time. By the way, the first time she gave the timeline, she had her phone, so she could have actually seen and opened up her phone and looked through her morning to see the things that happened, but she chose not to do that. She chose just to tell the police guy her version of what happened. So the TV guy there was there between 8 and 10. No, actually, he got there closer to 9. And then the other thing I got there was, I know now that it was her mum who actually arranged the TV repair. Is that right? Which is why she starts to kind of go off on one. I think this is leakage, Julia. Oh, yeah, then the TV guy would have called my mum. And then she says, trying to, and I think at that point she realizes, actually, I better back off on this one and not talk anymore about this one. So she pretends to be, or she's distracted by her phone and says, sorry, yeah. So the repair guy called.
Yeah, I agree. I don't believe she mentions her mom the first time through, ever.
But no, there's lots she doesn't mention that suddenly come up once the police have downloaded the phone.
And something with the mom she doesn't want to talk about. I absolutely agree with Jack that that's a moment where she stumbles. She's like, sorry. She just gets completely silent at that point. She's realizes she's going to say something she probably shouldn't say. And I think there was a lot more. I mean, she did describe her morning as being very busy, but we're finding out it was even busier. There's a lot more going on than she originally said, and which might explain it. What I think would be interesting to know, which I don't know, is would she ever go to lunch with friends without first showering?
No way. No way. For my analysis of her, no way in hell.
So somebody who seems very organized, very planned, at least that's some of the personality traits we're seeing in her interview, even though she's saying it's chaos and everything. She is meticulous about things. She's looking at people, she's introducing people, she's remembering her manners, as I said earlier. So I have a feeling that her morning was just more unexpected than she thought it would be. And I just would be interested to know exactly why she didn't shower, why she didn't have time, because I would think this should have been a normal day for her, completely normal. She should have had everything planned. And it does seem like I had a repair guy here. We all have that. We're working from home. I sent an email. This really shouldn't have been a crazy morning. It's a normal morning. But it became a crazy morning. We don't really understand why. And then Jack, I think it's leakage in this later part of the interview where she's starting to leak out and you realize, oh, well, her mom, he had called my mom. There's much more going on. And I wonder if the shower just got away from her and she didn't really get to prepare like she normally would have. Something is off.
I will give you my theory on that after we listen to the next section from Wendi and what she says. I think it's potentially very telling.
And let me just give you guys a couple background things. First of all, the TV. I don't know if you guys know this. It was essentially like a like you would see in a dorm room. It was like a tiny TV. It wasn't like this massive plasma that she even needed a repair person to come down. It wasn't like this thing where like. And also, I don't know if you noticed this. You probably did, I'm sure. But she's like, well, I had Charlie call and to see if it needed to be repaired. But the guy said it didn't need to repair. Basically, she should have just got a new TV. She didn't need to have a repair guy have in the first place. And to your point about like maybe this being a little more erratic this morning, just remember, this is the second time they went down. The first time she probably thought it was going to happen. Now this is the second time, so maybe like she was worried because the first time it was supposed to happen, it didn't. And then she has an 18-minute conversation with her brother Charlie, which she, kind of doesn't talk about initially, but then talks about. So
Julia said about watching interviews again and again and again and again, and there was something I kicked myself in the first part for not mentioning. She talks about the TV was broken in the past tense. The story, as we know, was the TV was unrepairable, therefore it still is broken at the point that Wendi was talking. And I thought that was very interesting that on the afternoon where the TV guy has not been able to fix the TV, she refers to it as was broken. And I think that suggested to me that the time the TV was broken or reported broken was very important to her. She doesn't care that the TV is broken. It's the fact that it was broken, therefore something could happen, i.e. the TV repair could be arranged.
And just so you know, her boyfriend Jeff at the time talks about when he first found out about it. He's like, first of all, because her story is that one of her kids threw something and it broke it. He's like, first of all, it didn't seem like the damage could have been. I had played catch with them. There's no way that they like threw something and broke it. And then second of all, she made the kids watch a movie. He talks about it. It was the dragon, the dragon cartoon. I'm forgetting the name. I'm sure someone in there, but she made the kids, instead of like going, they have other TVs in the house. That day that she's there, the last they watched this movie with the broken TV. The kids are like crying. They're like, this is awful. There's like a big thing, a big crack, but they still watch the TV. They still watch the movie on this broken TV. Train Your Dragon. Yeah, there it is. So anyway, that's just a little background that maybe you guys didn't know about.
There's got to be easier ways to get away with things.
Yeah. So all right, let me continue here.
A little before 10 a.m. he
Yeah.
left. Okay. And then you went back to working on papers and so forth?
Yeah, I was making some breakfast. I remember I was making oatmeal, so it was taking a while. It was like that kind that you have to stir for a long time. And I was talking to Charlie, so there's my call to Charlie, and then I called Renee, my friend who's interviewing for a job at FSU today. She was driving in, and I wanted to wish her good luck and see if I could meet her for a hug at some point today.
Okay.
So that was at 10:24. I called my friend Tova back at 11:22. I think I was just, in between working on the paper, being distracted.
So between 10:24 and 11:22, all right, 10:24, you're talking to Renee.
I talked to her for 18 minutes.
Okay, so now we're up to 10:24, 424 plus 18, we're at 40 something.
42?
42?
Yeah. Then I went back to working. And then I tried Danny again. I left a message at 11:42 a.m. It's probably just 27 seconds. I just left him a message.
Okay.
And this is outlet.
Before you go, I just want to say again, we had over 740 people here. This is one of my most watched lives ever. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. The likes, the comments, everything. Thank you. Please, please, please check out both our guest channels that are in the description, being shared in the chat. I promise you won't regret it. Go ahead, Jack.
Oh, you have such a lovely audience, by the way, Jay. Well, credit to you for building them.
Thank you.
Look, help me out here. How popular is she? She had a lot of phone calls to make. Now, none of these phone calls were in the first pass of the timeline. In fact, she said, I don't think I spoke to anyone else. She said that in the first go. All of a sudden, she's phoning a lot of people, and she's very aware of whether she spoke to the person or whether she left a message to them. So we'll see more of these coming here. So I think, Julia, she was really busy. Is it actually that she wanted to phone as many people as possible that morning so they could account for her whereabouts at that time? Oh, yeah, I talked to her at this time, or she left a message for me at this time, because she's making lots of calls. The other thing I notice around the calls is that if they make her look like a good person, she'll tell you what the content was. So I called Renee, my friend who's interviewing for a job at the FSU today. She was driving in. I wanted to wish her good luck and see if I could meet her for a hug at some point. That's my call to Charlie, and then I called Renee. So that's my call to Charlie. No description of what it was about or the content or the reason at all. But then we've got my friend Renee, who was applying for a job, my friend Toba. Later on, she talks about calling someone who's just had a baby, which, haven't I nice? I'm phoning people around their babies. So there's all these calls happening, which I find the fact that she's listing these off one by one very interesting, but also there are some calls where she's quite happy to explain why I wanted to phone them, what my relationship is to them, what we spoke about, how long we spoke to them. You know, she doesn't say how long the call to Charlie was. You know, she says, yeah, I was on the phone to Renee for like 18 minutes, but there was my call to Charlie, boom. And that's all she does to describe that. And she says this, the oatmeal breakfast, by the way, not in the first pass either. She said when the repairman went, she worked for a couple of hours or an hour or so or something like that. So she's started to introduce a lot more detail. I'd suggest this is much more realistic than the first pass, because she's thinking, I've now got to make what I say match what they know from my phone records. But it does feel like she has made a hell of a lot of phone calls that day. And she's very aware of whether she got through to them or whether she left a message to that person.
So before you go, Julie, so it's almost like she knew the police were going to talk to her, but she didn't expect them to take her phone, maybe. Go ahead, Julia, with what you're... Oh, go ahead,
So I just have a couple observations to add. I believe she says when she's talking with Charlie when she's making the oatmeal. Is that correct?
She says, I was making some breakfast. I remember I was making oatmeal, so it was taking a while, and I was like that kind where you have to stir for a long time. And I was talking to Charlie, so there's my call to Charlie, and then I called Renee. So she doesn't actually say she was making the breakfast when she was talking to Charlie. But she does run the two in together.
I think she's trying to make breakfast and on the phone with Charlie, which is why she leaves out that she made oatmeal in the first pass.
Ah, yes.
I think that's why she's just glossing over in the second. So then as she's recalling, now she's got to be more detailed. She's like, well, I was stirring and I was, so clearly she had a longer talk with Charlie. But the other word she uses in this is that she was distracted. And why is she distracted? Interesting topic when you're waiting for something, or you're waiting for news, or you're planning something, you get distracted. And she uses that word, and that is the reason she calls another friend. So yes. I find that an interesting term. What are you distracted by? She tries to blame it on her work, but this should be again a normal day. I'm distracted by my work, so I make a call. She's distracted by something else. Something is distracting her from a normal day. She's leaving that out. She's not telling us. It doesn't mean she knows about the murder, but
right. None of this means that she's this is all we're analyzing.
She's distracted by something, whether it's something Charlie has said, whether it's something to do with her mother. But she's distracted by something, and that is what she's not telling us, and that's an area of focus.
Wow. Go ahead, Jack.
It could be, and that's a great shout on that distracted, because she tells us she's distracting herself, because she's said in the first pass, I was working on this paper. She tells us later the paper is due soon or due today or something like that. And I wonder if she's distracting herself in her life, and in the parts of this interview that we haven't spoken about, she's cancelling things that are happening tonight. Like her manners are still around her. Why didn't you show at the party? My ex-husband was shot. That's all right. We forgive you for not phoning ahead and letting us know. But she's wanting to get all this in a row. She is very together, and it could be that she had to have this bit of work done. That is a thing that she has to do today. But there's all this other stuff going on around me, including the fact that I feel I have to phone people just to make sure, number one, I've got Charlie and my mom are around on the phone, but I've also got to make sure that there are some people who can vouch for my whereabouts, that I was speaking to them at such and such a time that morning, and it's getting in the way, it's distracting me from doing this work.
Wow, folks, I can't believe it's almost been an hour already. Julia, did you get to the part that you wanted to discuss about?
I think it's, you guys, maybe you already discussed it, because I think it's much earlier. There's just a couple things that I want to note just overall, particularly when the victim advocate comes in. And maybe you've already discussed this, so please tell me if you have or not. But she pays her compliments. She tries to have small talk with her. what Wendi is doing is she's attempting to build rapport, and that's what you do when you want to try to question somebody. And so she's trying, that's what I see she's, and that's what we're taught as interviewers, investigators. You want to sit down. You don't want to just start in, did you do it? You want to ask them, oh, it's a nice day out, and oh, you have kids, or you try to build rapport. And that's what she's doing with the advocate. And then as we see, she starts trying to question the advocate. And of course, the advocate comes in and tells Wendi, I need to get these numbers for you, this contact information. And then Wendi turns it on her and says, I need you to tell me how I can help you. And that's Wendi's way of getting the advocate to try to tell her information. She's already told her how you can help me. I need these numbers. And Wendi does it to her twice. So that's very interesting dynamic that throughout the interaction with Sarah, that's very telling. And you can tell Sarah's not comfortable with it. She's like, this is not how this works. I'm going to go get Detective Isom. It just becomes a little awkward. The other thing, have you talked about Game Changer?
No.
Okay. I just want to add this one in. So when Sarah tells her that Dan may not be dead. So what we know throughout the interview, as you pointed out, Jay, and this is what made me think of this, is that she's trying to figure out like all these things. She's acting so confused. What do I do? Do I call these people? Do I cancel this? How do I tell the boys? There's all this confusion. When Sarah tells her that Dan may not be dead, her reaction is, that's a game changer. What kind of terminology is that? It's not like relief. But what that tells me is that she had some sort of plan in place already. Even though she's acting like she doesn't, there's a plan in place based on the expectation that Dan is dead. And when she gets this little nugget, it is like, that's a game changer, which tells me she had plans.
Wow.
And so this suggests and it hints at a deeper involvement. And I think for me, that was the game changer. It's just such a weird response to like, oh, thank God. What do you mean he's alive? What does this mean? You know, it's really just such a moment of like, ugh, she's been shocked. And she was not expecting that. And then she goes on over and over through the interview, trying to determine, which would seem normal for a mother. Are we in danger? Are we in danger? But as you listen to her, you start to realize she's not actually trying to determine if they're in danger. She's trying to determine, have they identified someone or caught someone? That's what I think. And if you listen to it carefully, you can kind of pick that up. And that especially happens after Sarah lets her know that Dan is not officially dead.
Yeah, and I think her behavior changes too. She's different. First, she thinks he's dead, and then she's like, "Oh, he might be alive," and she's just like a different person. And by the way, just back to your point about like the things. What a weird thing to be like, "Oh, you kind of look like my sister," or we look alike. We could be sisters. Like, what a weird statement.
It's rapport building, and I think too, it's the assumption. This is a strange, but it's in her mind. She knows that if I tell her that I think we look alike, I'm paying her a compliment. So that goes to like, she knows she's attractive and that this would be a compliment. I don't go around thinking if I told someone, hey, I think you look like me, that they'd be like, oh, thank God. Somebody might be like, no.
It's such a weird.
It is very weird. And it's again, a moment of where you see this kind of clarity where she comes out of that weeping, that she's, in crisis mode. And she's like, oh, I think we look alike. Just very odd. And it's her way of giving a compliment.
There's so much odd about it. And I noticed when she doesn't ask the detective any of those procedural questions that she asks the victim advocate, she's divvied them up. She's gone, right, this person's going to give me this. I'm going to give that person this. And that is highly, highly unusual. If you've got a need, a pressing need when your ex-husband's been shot or you fear for your kids or anything like that, you want everyone to help you in any way that they can. But she's decided this person's going to give me the information on the investigation. Why is she interested in that? And it's only the investigation as far as it relates to her. So I don't think she ever asks, are there any suspects? Do you have any clues? It's, how did they get my car? How did you know the lunch was last minute? It's all questions about her. She's really, really, that's a priority to her. Do they think it was me?
And I think the difference too with how she's interacting with each of them, it is due to, she's very much aware he's an older, more experienced male investigator. This is a younger, I mean, I think Sarah's younger than her. I don't know for sure, but it seems that she might be, just based on their interactions and in the way she looks. And I think she thinks because she's female and she's younger, she has a better chance of manipulating Sarah and drawing out information. And we know she's attuned to gender roles, because when the sergeant comes in and leaves, and Wendi says, I don't know who that is, and they tell her she's a sergeant, and she's like, oh, how gender assuming I was about that. So, she's attuned to gender roles. And I think she's manipulating enough to be able to act one way and know what she can get out of the detective who's a male and more experienced, versus the victim advocate who's younger, female. And she's very well aware of gender roles, status, people's jobs. All of that plays into how she's interacting with these individuals. And it's a difference. She doesn't completely change her personality, but she certainly changes her approach. She's very skilled at it.
So good. And she brings up, oh, did we work at the same college? Did I see you speak at this thing? Do you know I have a book that's coming out that's going to be, she brings that up. She loves to bring that, I wrote this book, and it's going to be she brings that up. Like, there's a lot of things. I mean, this is, Julia, a great point, but there's a lot of that she does with this victim's advocate. It's not just, it's her skirt. It's that they look like sisters. It's that they work together. Like, she really, and she is so manipulative. I mean, from all of us that watch her, she is the queen of manipulation. Go ahead, Jack.
I was only going to say, like, that it's frankly, it's next level manipulation, where that you go through the process of building the rapport, she it's grooming. In fact, that's what it is. It's not it's grooming. So it's I'm going to spend some time building up this relationship with you, asking all these questions about you and talking about you and how you and I are so alike, to then take advantage of it. And it's it's a very interesting way to behave when you're in a police interview room.
So let me finish it with this. I mean, this has been absolutely amazing. You guys are blowing my mind, just like the first one. If you guys watching this, you didn't really have a lot of background. I mean, I think you kind of talked about this, Julia, then Jack. But do you think watching this police interview, if you were doing a profile for the FBI, would you be telling your coworkers or whoever, yeah, she was definitely involved, she knew about this and she was involved? Or is there not enough in this? What do you think, Julia?
I think at the very least, I'm going to use my words carefully, as people who listen to my show know I try to do. But at the very least, she had tacit knowledge. The very least.
What do you think, Jack?
I would, what I've noticed, I think the way I work, what my observations would lead to more questions or further investigations. So I would also say, I don't see anything here. If I didn't see anything here and I see lots there, but I would, at this point, if I was working on this investigation, if Julia had decided to be, we'll get him in, I would be saying there's a lot more questions she has to answer, and dig, very deeply into what was going on with her that morning, and wider than that morning, because I think she's got that morning boxed off, and she's quite comfortable that she's got it boxed off. But if anything gets out of that box, then there's some trouble.
Well, go ahead, Julia.
I was just going to say that in terms of her knowledge, it may very well be in terms of joking and coded language. I just cannot see through that interview. She did not have some inkling something was happening and that was going to happen. I don't come away with that. And let me just preface it. I've seen the Datelines, and I was more familiar with the case than Jack. I've seen the Datelines, and I've gone through the interview, and I do try to block out and try to just focus on the interview in front of me. But she does mention a lot about the joking, and he joked that this would be cheaper than a hitman, and I just have to wonder if she didn't have some knowledge, and maybe even said it would be a lot easier if Dan were dead. And knowing her brother well, he goes off and plans it.
Gotcha.
There is a thought and statement analysis that the things that people joke about repeatedly reveal their true character. So I think we probably all know that guy that jokes about, I'd love to have an affair with her, or, like she's a pretty girl when he's married or something like that. And that will actually turn out to be the person that does cheat on their wife and does have an affair. The person that jokes about doing drugs on a Friday night may well be the person that is actually doing drugs on a Friday night. And the things that people joke about repeatedly, we all make off-color jokes and so on, but the things that people joke about repeatedly will reveal their true character. So if he did make a lot of jokes about a hitman, that was in his head for him to be thinking about it and making jokes about it.
Well, I can't thank you guys enough. I see a lot of comments, bring them back. I mean, there's 3 trials of her testimony. If you guys are down, maybe we could do a future video where she gets, she has direct examination, cross-examination, and there's 3 different trials. So, I'd love to have you guys back at some point if you want to, but if not, that's cool. But please, folks, please check out their links on the replay crew, or if you're here now, give the podcast 5 stars, subscribe to all the things, please, because this has been just absolutely amazing, and I can't thank you guys enough. This actually, when I end this, it's going to go because Jack has a premiere. I don't know if it'll still be going. How long is your premiere, Jack?
It's 47 minutes. Not that I know that off the top of my head.
All right. So this will take you into Jack's premiere. What is it about, Jack?
It's about Sebastian Rogers, the missing kid in Tennessee. And it looks at his mom and stepdad. One of the early interviews they gave where Julia's talked a lot about leakage tonight, and they leak a lot. And
Julia, what do you have coming up on the podcast?
Well, we're right in the middle of the unsolved murder of Robert Wone, which
so good.
It's a very fascinating case. And Robert Wone was a Washington, D.C. attorney who was murdered on August 2nd, 2006. And he was staying in the home of a college friend who also had 2 other men living with him. So it's a fascinating case.
Please check out the pod, guys. Please. If you comment, it gets it in the algorithm. Let me know your thoughts. If you're on the replay crew, or even if you're here now, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and hopefully maybe we can do this again. But thank you guys so much. Have a good night, everybody, and make sure to check out Jack's. Hopefully this should take you right over to his video. Check it out. So